Hey everyone, this is Megan Hillier from Know Your Ancestors, and you're listening to the Know Your Ancestors podcast. Many of us have an innate desire to understand our roots, to know where we come from, and to understand the lives of our ancestors. On the show, I sit down with content creators and entrepreneurs to share some of the stories that I've uncovered and compiled about their own ancestors. Watch and listen as we discuss the traumatic and life-changing events of their close ancestors that helped shape who these guests are today. Welcome to the podcast today. Today is a behind the scenes episode where I share some of the tips and things that I did for the research for the last episode with Monica Packer, episode 30 called Giving Her a Voice with Monica Packer. So if you haven't watched that or listened to that one yet, you can go back and do that. In these behind the scenes episodes, I share some tips that you can use with your own family history to help you uncover the stories and those things that happened in your ancestors' lives. So, in that episode, I talked about Monica's second great grandmother. And she had a daughter before she was married, and the only information that we have about who her father was is this court document that her uncle had issued in 1959, like 55 years after this daughter was born. And it said that this daughter's father was Fred Barnes. And so in the episode, I shared how I had narrowed it down to two possible Fred Barneses just based on the location of where her second great grandmother was at the time. And I really think that she was probably in Missouri when she had that relationship that conceived this child that was born in 1904. So I'm going to show you how I kind of looked at the possible Fred Barneses in the area and figured out which one it could be. Now, because we don't know much about this family, all we know is that one name. We do know that her birth record does have the Barnes name as her last name, but we haven't gotten the birth record. I've been trying to get it from Vital Check. Some states just like the records are not easily available. So for Oklahoma, that's where this daughter was born. The vital records are not easy to locate online. I could order them by mail and I'd have to prove that I am, a relative or something. But I'm crossing my fingers that Vital Check is going to let me order it. I've submitted it and they asked for identification. So I'm not sure if it's going to go through. I might have Monica, because she is her second great granddaughter, order these records. So we'll see how it goes. Might give a quick update on Instagram if I get some information about that. But this concept of like finding possible ancestors in a location can be helpful for lots of different instances. Maybe you don't know exactly where your ancestors lived and you're trying to find them in a census. Maybe you're not sure which one is your ancestor. This can help you kind of get a solid understanding of how many people there are in a location with your ancestor's name to help you figure out which one is your ancestor. So I'm going to share with you how I did this and then how you can do this too with your own family, how to search for census records in a really efficient way, and how you can find who these people are and hopefully find the right one for your family. Okay, so this was the court document that just said that her father was Fred Barnes. And then I narrowed it down to this possible Fred Barnes. He was the only one in neighboring counties. There was no Fred Barnes of the right age in the county that they lived in, which was Howell County in Missouri. So I think this was Texas County. I'm not sure exactly anything about what the county was, but the county just to the north, there was a Fred Barnes that would have been about 22 at the time of this relationship. So this is a possibility. Again, we don't know for sure until we do like DNA research or find an actual record that ties this person to this daughter. Okay, and then here they moved to Oklahoma. Sometime after that, we don't know if that was before this child was born or before that child would have had to have been conceived. But there is another Fred Barnes that lived quite close to the Iman family. You can see that this Barnes family was on page 14 of 17 in that location. And then the Iman family, where Lucy's parents lived, was on page 15. So again, we don't know for sure. So there was a son that was James F. and his middle name was Frederick. Could have gone by Fred. We don't know for sure. We don't even know for sure if this could have been the right one, but I'm going to show you how you can find those possible people in your family tree. Okay, so I find that searching for census records on Ancestry is much easier. I don't know why, but I prefer it. So if you have an Ancestry subscription, I would recommend searching for records on Ancestry that are on there, like versus Family Search. Family Search, I find that their search fields aren't quite as simple to use. I don't know, it's harder to like narrow down and be specific. They tend to give you results that you're not asking for. So maybe I'm just not doing it right, but that's how I feel about it. So if you have Ancestry, try searching for census records there. But if you don't, you can do this on Family Search as well. So when you go to Ancestry and you just want to look, I just want to look for specific census records. So this daughter was born in 1904. So that's right in between two census records of 1900 and 1910 in the United States, right? So we want to look at both of those and see what Fred Barnes are living in the area. Now, could someone have moved into the area and then moved out before 1910? Yes, totally likely. So we don't know that this is the right Fred Barnes. And we won't know until they do a DNA test and try to find a match with descendant of a Barnes, or until they find records that link them together. Okay. So I'm just going to show you how to look for census records for a specific name to try to narrow it down to possibilities. Okay, so we go to search and then census and voter lists, and we're just going to search that one specific census. Okay, so then you can narrow by category here. We're going to go to the US federal census, and then we're going to look at the 1900 census. So all we know for sure is his name, right? That's all that was given about him. So we're going to put in his first name of Fred, and we're pretty sure the last name is correct. He could have been Frederick, could have been the middle name of Fred, so we're not going to put exact there. We could even do sounds like and these just to see if there's one similar, okay? Now, the family was living in Howell County, Missouri, so we're going to put that here, and that auto-populates there. And instead of exact to that, we're going to do county and adjacent counties. Okay, so people that lived in either the same as Howell County or the ones nearby, because counties were not super large. People could have come and gone. People could have lived near the border and all of that. Okay, we're going to hit search and see what shows up. Okay, so we've got 29 possibilities. Now you could go through this and look at the birth date, see if they would have been old enough to father a child in 1904, or we could add that information. So let's just add that quick. So to be old enough by 1904, they would have to have been married by, would have had to have been born by like 1887-ish, around there, right? But they could have been a lot older, right? So let's just look at any above 1850. Actually, I did that. We're going to do 18. Let's do 1875. Oh my gosh. 1875. And then we're going to do plus and minus 10 years. So we can start with that and just see how many there are, and then we can add more years if we feel like we need to. Okay, there's 13. So then you can just go through and see which ones look like possibilities. So we have this Ford Barnes. I looked at this one. You can see that I looked at that, and then I saw that like his name could have been indexed wrong or whatever, Ford. But then I looked here and there was several Ford Barneses. So there is a Ford Barnes. Don't think that Ford Barnes is our Fred Barnes. Could be, but we don't know for sure. But we're going to look at one that might be more likely. Okay, so then here's this Fred Barnes. Okay. And then when we keep looking down, there's a Frank Barnes, a Rachel, Charlie, Thomas, Fred Burns. And then the names just start getting a little far out of our frame there. So this Fred Barnes is kind of standing out here. So this is the one that I found that I said was a possibility. He was 18 in 1900, so he would have been about 22 at the time of their relationship. And we can see that they lived in um, Sherrill, Missouri in Texas County, which was just north of there. So now that we have that, we have this possible Fred Barnes. We can see in 1910, you can see if this is the same one. It's in Sherrill, Texas again. And by this point, he's married with a daughter. Um, you don't always want to assume that these are right, these suggested records, but I did look at these a little deeper and it does seem like he's the same one. Okay, so if we go back to that Fred Barnes in 1910, then we can look at how far is that from our known location. So Sherrill, Texas. Okay. So let's put that. And then we do know that they lived at White Church. I think that's what it's called. There we go. Okay. So we can see that that is about 60 miles, 68 miles away. It seems a little far, but again, it's possible that they traveled, whatever, and we don't know for sure what happened. So that is how you can kind of see a possible location. You narrow it down, but not too narrow. You search that one specific database, that one specific census record, and then see how many people there are with that same name. Okay, we could make this wider, right? Let's try 65 plus or minus 10 years. Here's this Fred S. Barnes in Illinois. Let's take a look at that guy. Okay, so this is in Clay, Douglas, Missouri, so you can see how far that place is. Okay, so that one is a lot closer. Well, 58 miles away. And now I'm like, why did I not see that one when I looked before? So maybe we found another one. Maybe we now found another possibility. So we have this Fred S. Barnes. He was 40 years old in 1900, so he would have been 44 at the time that her daughter was born. Seems a little old because she was 18, I believe. But again, that's possible, right? So now we have this other possible Fred Barnes that I don't know why it didn't show up before when I was looking for this. I don't know. So now we can do some more searching with this Fred Barnes and see if this is a possibility. So that can help you hopefully to see how you can look for census records. Maybe you don't know exactly where your ancestor lived. You want to see how many possibilities there are with their same name. Then you can kind of, once you find one of them, you can research them. You can see them in other census records and see if they have the same family or whatever, see if they match up. So this is a little different than that, but it's the same kind of concept. So as I was researching this Fred Barnes, researching Lucy Iman, who had this daughter before she was married, she married Robert Fish in 1906, I believe. Yeah. And as I was looking into this Robert Fish, I saw that he was living with a Barnes family when he was 5 years old. I just kind of saw this record like it was one of these possible ones that came up on the side. So I wasn't totally sure if it was right. So I did some looking at that and found that it actually was him. So I'm just going to show you what I found there for a minute. Okay, so this Robert Fish, who Lucy Iman married later, and they had a son together, Wiley Fish. His mother was Jane Elizabeth Ryan. His father was Daniel Fish, and Daniel passed away I'm not sure the year. I didn't put that down. In like 1870 something, I think. Okay, so then Jane Ryan, who was Robert's mother, married a man named Jewett Barnes. So I don't know if there's any sort of link between this Jewett Barnes family and the Fred Barnes that was said to have fathered Susie Iman, but I just thought it was a little weird that that was the same family name, the same Barnes name, that then of, I guess, the stepfather of Robert Fish, who married Lucy Iman. I looked as good as I could to see if this Jewett Barnes was related in any way to either of those Fred Barneses that I found. Now that we found that third one, we could do some digging into that one. But I couldn't see any relation. They lived in Nebraska, and none of their kids I could see went to Missouri or to Oklahoma. So I'm not sure if there's any connection there. But it's kind of interesting to see just the possibilities that there are, the more unanswered questions that we have, and hoping that Monica's family can get some more loose ends tied up for them. So you can see that this isn't like an exact science, right? You can't just want to find the person and you'll find everything about them and it will all be nice and pretty. You kind of have to do some digging, find some clues, and see what seems most likely. With Monica's family, I recommend that they do some DNA research, someone take a DNA test, and there could be some matches with Barnes descendants. And then that can help them research and see if they can find who that Fred Barnes was in that family tree. So hopefully this was helpful for you just to see how to look for census records. If you're very new to looking for records, that's how you can do it on Ancestry. I love to just look for that one specific census that I'm looking for. Then I don't have to sort through so many different matches. I can just, get quite tight on the results that I want to find. So hopefully that can help you with your own research to look for census records, especially when you're not super sure where your ancestor lived and you need to look at all the possibilities to narrow down which one is your ancestor. So thanks so much for watching today or listening, and we'll see you next week with a new guest episode. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast today. If you could leave a rating and review, that would be great. This is how people can find the podcast and get more people to listen and to understand the power of knowing their ancestors. If you want to learn how to do this yourself, how to build your family tree, or how to learn the stories of your ancestors, you can go to knowyouраncestors.co to find my 2 courses that are available to purchase. Know Your Family Tree takes you through understanding how to build your family tree and how to research it. This is the basis for how you can find information and stories about your ancestors. And then my more in-depth course, Know Your Ancestor, where you can learn how to look at records differently, how to find those pieces of information that tell your ancestor's story, to consider what trauma they might have experienced, what resilience they had in face of their challenges, and can help you really understand yourself in the process. So you can go check out both of those courses on my website, knowyouраncestors.co.